After 30 years of experience as a real estate entrepreneur, Ben Wacksman's unwavering passion was to design a new way to live and offer residents opportunities to increase personal fulfillment and well-being. The concept of Emerson, a luxury townhome community, emerged as Ben read Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, Nature. His extensive studies of neighborhoods took him from communities coast to coast in the USA, Europe, and even to Japan. He studied how design can inspire people to discover friendships and how to seamlessly integrate the latest scientific studies to elevate wellness in a setting surrounded by nature. Residents can enhance their overall health and experience the sparks of excitement in finding a community that celebrates camaraderie, engaging activities, lifelong learning, and an inspiration to live in their own unique way. Through curated programs, precise neighborhood design, and beautifully crafted homes, Ben's community, Emerson Gainesville, provides more than a place to live. Hear Ben's story in this week's episode of the WHOA GNV podcast. You are listening to WHOA podcast, coming to you from Gainesville, Florida. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the WHOA GNV podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa. I am your host, Collin Austin, and today's episode is made possible because of Kyle Cohan and the team over at Leonardo's Mill Hopper. Leonardo's Mill Hopper offers the same classic food, family-friendly atmosphere, local beers on draft and in cans, and they even have an upgraded wine selection. I know because I took a bottle home to my wife, and she loved it. Whether you want to dine in, order carry-out, or have one of the local delivery services bring it to you, Leonardo's Mill Hopper has dinner covered. Kyle and the team have a huge heart for Gainesville and have been incredibly supportive of our show, so definitely show them some love and order today. Place your order by visiting leonardosmillhopper.com or by visiting them at their shop or by giving them a call at 352-376-2001. I guess it's not really a shop, it's a store. So go visit their restaurant, baby. All right, you guys, today on the show, we are joined by Ben Wacksman, developer of Emerson Gainesville, a luxury townhome community. Ben, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So I always like to start with a story, man. I want to jump right in. I want to kind of hear, about you. Like, why are you in Gainesville? And then I want to hear all about this development that you're working on.
Sure. Well, thanks a lot. Gainesville's sort of a remarkable city because we have the University of Florida here, the nation's flagship public university. And Gainesville has certain qualities to it that were very attractive. And I can go a little bit deeper into the story itself. But if we just think of Gainesville, you have intellectual powerhouse at the university. I mean, there are Nobel Prize-winning scientists here, people coming to visit, great things going on, right? Also, we have a respect for the natural environment, nature. This is known as a tree city. I think for 37 years, Gainesville's been the number one tree city in the United States. It's known for its natural environment and the nature trails that have been developed here. It's also very friendly for people who love the outdoors, who love exercise, and who love being involved in physical activity, right? So you start combining all these different elements and you say, you know what? Gainesville has the seeds of really a great place to live, to work, to play. So as someone who was looking to do something sort of unique and something different, Gainesville really fit the mold on what I was looking for. And really, it hasn't disappointed. Also, the other thing that's interesting about university cities in general, and Gainesville also in particular, it's quirky a little bit, right? We have little shops. We have great little custard places. We have really out-of-the-wall, off-the-wall little restaurants we can go to. And it has a uniqueness to it. Now, Florida is not always like that. So for someone like myself looking to do something a little different, wow, it really fit that mold.
Okay, so where are you from?
I'm originally from New York City. I was born in Brooklyn. I grew up in the Rockaways. If you know, it's a beach community up in New York City. And you went to school? Where'd you go to school? I went to, high school. I went to Farquhar High School, which doesn't exist anymore. I went to Farquhar High School. Then I went to college at New York University and graduate school at Columbia University. And I met my wife there, who's a fifth generation Floridian. And we met there, and she brought me to Florida.
Oh, so she's the reason you're down here.
She's the reason I'm down here, yeah.
All right, so, I mean, when you moved to Florida, was it straight to Gainesville, or is it somewhere else?
is kind of interesting. We had this sort of deal going on that she said, as long as we return to Florida, you can go to any city.
Why does she want to come to Florida so bad?
Well, she wanted to come back. She would have preferred Gainesville.
Okay.
But I was looking for a bigger city, so I looked at Tampa, Orlando, South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and I really liked Tampa. Tampa had a sort of a nice mix. If you go to places like Ybor City, older communities there, it reminded me a little bit of that ethnic diversity and sort of older architecture that we had in New York. So I felt a little more comfortable there naturally.
Okay.
Yeah. So we chose to settle in Tampa.
Okay. And when was that?
Back in 1989.
And so that's where you've been all this time, and then you just like now are you like still in Tampa and you're just like doing this development in Gainesville, or did you guys relocate to Gainesville?
Well, we sort of relocated. We have a place here,
okay,
but we also have a place still in Tampa. Our son went to or still goes to Oak Hall School. He's a senior, so he's been there all 4 years. So we consider ourselves sort of Gainesville residents at the moment, even though we're not 100% here yet. We're hoping once I build my project, we'll be here 100% of the time.
All right, so talk to me about this project, man. I've seen some great promotional materials and some it looks amazing, and so that's why we wanted to have you on the show, because I want to hear all about it. I want to hear why Emerson, why did this spark from?
Well, it's an interesting question. In the 19 really, I think it was 2009 actually. 2009, I had sold most of my company. I had built a company from scratch and built it up and sold it. And I was thinking of what to do next.
Hold on, what company is this?
It was a real estate company called Capital Realty Investors. We bought office, industrial, retail, hotel properties. And we started with just myself and a computer, really, and built it up to a very large company, 200 employees,
Dang.
and ended up selling it to Wall Street people. And all
After
that
how
kind
long?
of stuff. 7 years.
7 years?
7 years. Built it in 7 years.
Wow.
I was a little frustrated by it, though. It sounds like a great story, but I was a little frustrated. I had really developed a system to do some terrific things within the business. I was setting up systems. I was really focused on customer service. One of the things I did that really was transformative for me, I almost recommend for anybody to take a look at, is the Ritz Carlton Leadership Academy. Mm. We sort of by chance had purchased a hotel, and when we purchased a hotel, I really had to learn the business. And one of the things I did is I went to their leadership academy at the Ritz Carlton. Ritz Carlton's won the Malcolm Baldrige Award 3 times. So they are required to teach other business people these skills. So they do a week-long course on customer service. And you really learn how experts systematize how they deliver great customer service to people. And I found that fascinating. Because really what really got me excited about business in general was delighting the customer, right? If you're my guest, I want you to leave happy and delighted. And it was thrilling to me to be able to do that. So I was building this company. And then when I sold it, because the market had gotten so hot, and we sold it, but I was a little disappointed, frankly. The day after I sold it, it was like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to come back to work. I didn't know. I hit a pretty good point in my career.
You didn't take like a long vacation. I feel like, man, all right, I just sold a company. Finally, I get my break.
I could tell you, in my case, it wasn't even like that. It was actually the opposite. I almost had an existential crisis, because I'm sitting there. I had this company. I built the 200 employees. I had this whole thing going, and you're supposed to do this, right? So we sold it, and everything was great. But I was missing something, and I had to figure out what that was. So I traveled a lot. I went to Europe and I went to Asia, and I was looking at the way people lived there. One of the things that frustrated me about our country and at the present time was there's so much division and anger, and people seem unhappy generally, and it bothered me. It bothered me, but it's still, and it bothered me. So I said, well, how can I make any kind of contribution in that way that might help? I had no idea. But I started going around the world and seeing how other people were doing things. I saw slight differences in what was happening in communities. And I came back to the States, and I started to look for some new ideas, some things that we can do to change the dynamic and make people feel more comfortable living together in the same place. And my question was really, what are they missing? What are we missing? And what am I interested in? And initially I was interested in, well, how are people happy? How do we help them be happy, right? At first I wanted to give them happiness, right? Wrap it up in a box and give it to them. I can't do that because everyone's different, and I don't even know how to do that. But what I did know how to do is I did know how to research and try to build a really exceptional community that incorporated some of the newest scientific research that hits some of the marks I was interested in. The first one was people are happiest when they have neighbors who they know and live in a community where they feel supported. Most of us don't have that. Some of us do. I grew up in a city in New York City. I grew up in neighborhoods. And everyone thinks New York's is so big and impersonal city. In our neighborhood, everyone knew each other. People would talk to each other. You felt very supported even from a little kid up. I was finding that missing. Some of it had to do with the fact that Florida has a lot of new people coming in all the time, and people have a hard time connecting. But some of it has to do with the way we plan our residences. And so I studied how to do this, and we found that if we build micro neighborhoods, even in a large community, a micro neighborhood is no more than maybe 20 residences together, and then another 20 residents somewhere else, but no more than that. Because once you do more than that, people lose the human touch with each other, and they begin to feel isolated. So that bothered me. So I said, that's one of the things we want to do. Second was, if you don't have your health, you can't be happy, right? Things aren't really going well health-wise. So how could we bring wellness, real wellness and health into a community? The third was, how do we connect nature? Because we've all become disconnected for the most part to the natural environment. Natural environment's really just part of our lives. They're part of us. I mean, every element in the periodic table exists in plants, animals, everything comes from stars, right? So all of this, I thought, would help people to become more in touch with their neighbors, in touch with themselves. And Gainesville has the other unique quality, which is a university community. And some of the best times that many of us have had who've gone to university is the time at the university. And why is that? Well, we had a sense of freedom. We can explore any interest we had. We can take any class we wanted to. And that freedom, we sort of lose a little bit as we go on through life. So what we wanted to do here was to create that sense of possibility within the community as well. So those are the three things. One of the things we did to do that was to create a job of a concierge. That job that we're going to have is to help connect all the residents to the university community and all the cool things that are here, all the quirky things.
So did a lot of this come, I mean, it sounded like a lot of it was inspired by your travel, right? Because you said that you know what,
a lot of this was inspired by irritation. And I didn't like what I was seeing, and I wanted to try to change it. So I would say that's where the drive was. But I read the essay, Nature, by Ralph Waldo Emerson, which I recommend everybody read. As a matter of fact, I was talking to an architect who was involved in the project, and she hadn't read it since high school. She reread it, and she said that every architect should be required to read Nature. What the gist of the essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson is saying, and by the way, the community is named Emerson after Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay, Nature. The idea is to connect people naturally back to the environment. So if there's some people who are active, who hunt and fish and who go on the water. There's a lot of people who don't. And we wanted to offer people in the community a chance to naturally connect with nature. So we built a trail preserve system into our community that we're developing here.
So, I mean, going from like your previous business that you sold into this, I mean, with that business, like, were you always a developer within that? Like, where'd you become a developer at?
I was more of an investor. In my other business than a developer. The idea is, when you're an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. So what you're really trying to do, most of us who are looking at it, we're trying to solve problems, right? And, you know, in our society, you're rewarded for solving problems. You're rewarded in a lot of ways, not just financially, but you're rewarded in, you know, helping people's lives improve. Think of just any product that you like, going to Starbucks for a cup of coffee. it improves your life. You feel better about your day. Well, what are they really selling? Are they selling coffee, or are they selling that sensation of feeling pretty good about my day, right? And this is the magic of business. So if you're able in those businesses to create that, the business succeeds. And Starbucks, unbelievable, right? These businesses really succeed. For me, I wanted to devote a good part of my business career toward service, to making sure that everything I did was to solve a problem, to enhance lives, right? And to do it in a way that makes people feel good about where they're living. And by the way, the only thing I knew was real estate. So it was the only thing I was good at. So.
All right. So when you make this transition into development, like, what did that look like?
It's really not that.
Were you teaming up with other people again? Like, were you investing, or were you going out and learning new skills? Like,
well, the skills are the same. I think once you're in business, the skills translate to almost any other business. There's an expertise that comes in for having done it. So you go to people who have the expertise, and you can hire the expertise for anything, right? And so you look for the very best people. Like in my case, I hired the consultant who built that community that I found that I really thought was great when I was looking through a bunch of Urban Land Institute case studies. And I went out to visit their community. They hosted me for 4 days, which goes to show you, by the way, business people, sometimes there's some people who are not nice. Most of them are the nicest people you get to meet. They're all struggling. It's really a hard thing to do. You're up against incredible odds all the time. You have to really be committed. So people who are like that love talking to each other because we're the only people who really understand, what we're doing. So this group invited me out for 4 days. I ended up hiring the developer and the architect to help me think through the concept plan. And then we hired really smart people to help us. We have our construction partner who's Joiner Construction. We're using local people. EDA, local engineering firm. We've hired our interior designer, Amanda Carrion, local. Our realtor, Lisa Fetro, local. Liquid Creative, our marketing firm, local. So we've hired local, but we try to hire the best people so that this bolsters, all of our team, every member of our team. And we've approached it in an interesting way from a business perspective. It's not really about, we're calling me the developer. The reality of it is it's a team effort, and every member of our team, and I've challenged everybody to do this, every member of our team, we're like craftsmen. And what we're doing is we're taking a shot at the stone so that we can shape the eventual sculpture that comes out. Everyone has their part. So my part may be the leader. Someone else's part might be the architectural planner. Some other part might be the engineer. But each part is equally important. So we've approached it really from a team approach. And the reason we've done it is, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is create something that is absolutely excellent, where people who live there can't believe that this community exists, that we put so much into it. And even if for some reason we didn't do it, we put every last effort of our enthusiasm, of our commitment into it. So people will know that, and I think it's important.
Yeah. So, is this going to be like the Ritz Carlton of developments?
Well, I can't compare anything to the Ritz Carlton. They got their own. I would say what we're trying to do is create a new paradigm for the real estate industry. We're building with material that's natural material, like we have natural cedar. We're preserving trees. We're going to plant 100 new trees. We had to relocate and pull up some trees. The city has rules on this stuff, so we had to do some of that. But we're going to be planting 100 new trees. This is going to be a natural community where you can feel comfortable that you're living naturally with nature. You're not going to nature, right? You're immersed in it, which, by the way, we are anyway, but we're just not really remembering this.
Yeah. So where is this? What's the dream? Like, where is this going? Like, is this just development number one and then we're off to the next city, or is this it and we're done and we're patting ourselves on the back and we're happy and everybody's well with nature, this awesome development? If anybody knows, are you moving into the development? Like, where's it all going?
Well, if anyone knows me, I am going to move into the development. And we're going to base this in Gainesville. But what we're looking to do is eventually use this community as the first of about 10 of these communities. What we want to do is we want to show and demonstrate that you could build into the natural environment in a sensitive way and do it in a way that enhances the lives of the people who live there. These aren't big communities. There's only 58 units in this community, so it's limited. And we're using the best materials, and we're committed to the community, a sense of community. What we're testing here in Gainesville, which is real important, is can we connect to the university? Can we bring the university, the excellence, all of the great things happening there into our community and have people in our community really participate in the great things the university has? Can the magic of Gainesville be made a part of this community where you're feeling people really feeling part? We have a great art museum here. I mean, there's a performing arts center. I mean, we've got so many terrific things, and then quirky things like the Hippodrome. There's so many cool things going on. In addition to that, you have a lot of major developments happening. I mean, you have the expansion of Butler Plaza, you have Celebration Point. These are really visionary developers who are doing some interesting things. We're a little bit different, right? We're kind of set back into nature, close enough so anyone could enjoy those developments, but far enough away that you're not feeling like you're in the middle of a city.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a very unique piece of it. For me, I think a lot of people don't realize that Gainesville's more than a college town, right? Like, this is one thing that we've talked about multiple times on the podcast, is that Gainesville gets labeled as this college town where you go for school and then you leave. And then, like, all of us know, like, it's way more than that. I where I live, I'm like, there's no college students out there. I'm not surrounded by college students all the time. But if I want to go to a football game and be surrounded by it, then I can. And I love being immersed into college culture when I want to be. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. It's definitely a unique concept. I look forward to kind of seeing where it goes for sure.
Yeah, there's an interesting point from what you just said, which I agree with. Is that we did some research. Originally, the idea was we might want to age restrict, right? We decided not to. We read a study. I read a study by MetLife that said that people who live in intergenerational communities like Gainesville live longer. Their longevity rate is about 15% longer than people who don't. So if you're in an age-restricted community, you don't have that benefit. So the idea here is, if you can begin as a society, basically, right, to integrate young people with older people, with middle-aged people, everybody's together in this way, everyone benefits. The young benefit from the knowledge of the older people. The older people benefit from the enthusiasm of the younger people. And this creates an interesting energy that we're trying to create. Now, the other thing is, cities like Austin, Texas, have a great university, right? And they expanded into a major city. Now, I don't think Gainesville will or wants to get that big, and it doesn't have the state capital, which Austin does. But there's some elements that are very similar. If you go back to Austin 20 years ago, people want to come to this part of the state, right? You're not in a hurricane zone. You're close enough to the water, but far away from it, not to experience flooding and things like that. So there's good things, good reasons to be here. It's always attracted interesting people.
That's one of the biggest sells I've always used was location. I feel like we're always, we're 2 hours from Tampa, 2 hours to Orlando, hour and a half to Jacksonville, an hour and a half to Tallahassee, 2 hours to Tallahassee if you really want to go. And it's very centrally located. I love it.
Well, one of the things that's interesting is when I went around the state, I would always run into people who went to UF. Yeah. And I wish I could live in Gainesville. You're living their dream, right? Everyone who's living here is living these people's dream. They're in big cities. They're doing all these different things, but they wish they were in Gainesville. I think there's more of that than we realize. And those of us who are here, it's easy to forget. I have a good comparison for myself. I've traveled up, seen a lot of cities all over the world. I've lived in New York City. So I've seen a lot of this. There's some really special things about Gainesville that make it quite unique. And I think everyone who lives here should be really taking advantage of all those cool things.
Yeah.
There's lots of them. Yeah.
So I want to hear more about just you and business in general.
Sure.
Particularly how long have you been an entrepreneur?
Oh boy, I was probably an entrepreneur since I was a little kid.
Okay.
I mean, we used to, in New York, I used to put together, have my brothers, I had 2 brothers, I used to put them together. We used to shovel snow, right, for money, right? We'd go into the houses when there was a big snowstorm. And I would collect the money and I would pay them their portion. And I learned that was my first lesson about labor relations.
Okay.
Because they started to say, I was giving them less than I was taking, right? So I would take, let's say it was 50, I'd take 25, 30, and give them whatever the remainder was, split it between them. And they eventually came to me and said, Ben, I don't think that's fair. We're doing the same amount of work you are yet. But I'm like, well, I sold the job. I got to, and we had this whole labor relations issue, which helped us out. We were able to settle it.
What age is that, you think?
Oh, Lord. I was probably 10, 12, something like that. So from a little kid. And then I had a car wash business when I was about 17. And we would go wash cars, and there was 2 of us, and we did all this advertising, and we would go to people's houses, which they didn't do in those days, but we used to go to their houses, and we would do their cars. And then my buddy, he broke his leg, and he couldn't do it, and we had all these jobs scheduled. Yeah. And I remember calling him up, pleading with him, please, Neil, can you please come and help me? He goes, look, I have a broken leg. How am I going to do it? I said, come on, man, just come out and just do something. And he's like, no, I can't do it. So I was like, all right. So now I myself had to go out there, and I think I spent, I probably started at 6 in the morning and ended at midnight doing these cars. At the end of the day, I said, I never want to wash another car again. I don't even want to wash my car.
Isn't it interesting how entrepreneurship just ends up being in your blood? I mean, do you look back at those times, you're like, man, look where I am now?
Not really. I think it's interesting. What I look at business as I look at it as an art. So what happens is my art, because I can draw very well, my art is the canvas I put on the canvas is business. Someone else could do a more beautiful job as an artist, right? Another person might be a great teacher and so I think you're doing a great podcast, right? There's art in that. And I think that's, to me, the magic of what we're all doing. I almost think it doesn't matter what you're doing as long as something you really love and you enjoy and you realize that it is painting this canvas and it's expressing yourself. That's the key thing. I mean, we all want to express ourselves. And we've all had jobs where we couldn't, right? And that got us upset, And I remember going years ago, meet with a very, very top developer in Tampa. And we were talking about a job. They were trying to hire me. And I was talking to him, and I said to him, I just want to let you know that before we talk, you got to know I'm a little immature. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, I like to have fun every day. And he goes, I like to come to work and have fun every day. He's like, and he looked at me, sat back, and I thought, this interview's going to be over. And he goes, Ben, be like that all the time. Don't ever change that. He goes, I do that too, right? So I think now every day is not a fun day, right? I mean, you have frustrations. This is part of the deal. But without those challenges and without those obstacles and without those even failures, life would be fairly uninteresting, wouldn't it? You just sail, everything goes perfect every day. You ever read a novel like that? What if I told you a novel about a guy and just everything goes right from every day, never has a bad day, everything goes good. Yep, hungry, eats, nothing, no problem. That's not interesting. It's interesting the person who overcomes adversities, right? All
right, so tell me about the biggest adversity you've ever had to overcome.
Oh my goodness, there's thousands of them. It's so funny.
Biggest challenge. Forgive me the first 500 of them then.
I had one time. Here's a big one. I had started my company. I had, we were managing a lot of properties. This is during the downturn, not this past one, the one before, in the 90s. And it was a rough time to be in business. And I had this contract that was coming to fruition that was really good. It was going to be very good, and it died. And I had to tell my wife that the business was going to fail. And I had to call her up. She was working at the time. And I called her up. She comes in the office.
Well, because everything was riding on that one deal?
Things were so tight that without that deal, we couldn't be in business.
Gotcha.
And that business deal I thought it was going to happen, and it just dies, right? So we're in the, I call her. I spent a couple of days just kind of, how am I going to do this? Because she's going to feel terrible. And I call her in there. And at the time, I kind of felt like a failure, I guess you could say. And it wasn't working out. It wasn't my fault. Sometimes you do everything possible, right? And it doesn't work out. I don't know about you. It happens to me, right?
All the time.
And when you're younger, there's a tendency to blame yourself. Well, it's not your fault. Stuff happens. The universe functions. Things happen. And you do the best you can. So anyway, I had done the best I can. It wasn't working out. I call her up. She comes in, and she's very sad. She might have even been crying. And, we're talking how we're going to do this and all this. In the middle of the call, in the middle of this, I get a phone call. In the middle of this conversation. And I pick up the phone, and it's the real estate broker who's involved in the transaction. He says, Ben, it's back on. We just signed the papers. You'll have it tomorrow morning. It was insane. It was great. But it saved our business and kept us going.
So what had changed in that deal?
They changed. They made a different decision. I had here's another one. I bought an office building. And I had, I'm very careful. I was a very careful investor. Bought an office building. I had negotiated a deal with this big national company to come in as a tenant. And it's all negotiated. The lease is on the table of the other people. And so I get a call from the real estate broker saying, Ben, you got to buy the building. You got to close. They won't delay it until we get it signed back. Well, I've been in business at that point about 20 years. I've never had a problem with it. So I said, I'll take the risk. So I buy the building, and 2 days later, I get a call from the guy at the company saying the president had changed, and the new president nixed the lease.
No.
That was going to fill. So now I own an empty building. As a matter of fact, I brought my financial guy to go through it, and he looks around, he sees it's all empty. He goes, Ben, interesting. It says it's unencumbered by leases. There's no leases there. So it was just an empty building. So what do we do? I could sit there crying my soup. There's all bad things. There's lots of obligations, financial. Nah. We said, you know what? We're going to go ahead and we're going to renovate the building, right? And we went ahead and we started to renovate the building. While we were renovating the building, the Veterans Administration drove by. They saw that renovation was going on. They said, what's going on in that building? It checked in. They became our tenant. So we had a replacement tenant. And I think the moral to some of these stories is sometimes quitting is the worst thing that you could ever do. Bad things happen to everyone, okay? You can't live in this life. If you're having a life where nothing bad happens to you, you're not human. I want you to introduce me. By the way, I'd like to see that guest on your show one day where nothing ever happened bad
Never
to him.
Been
Okay?
here.
I mean, really. So we got to accept that bad things are going to happen, negative things happen, but it's how you handle it that makes the difference. So I think if there's anything that's made a difference for me in my career is the seriousness I took of what I was doing, in that it wasn't about me so much.
Yeah, but
right?
did you train yourself to get to that point? Like, how did you get to that point? Because I think it's easy to lose that deal and then dwell, right? You start dwelling on it, like, oh man, like, and you get hung up on it. Maybe people get depressed about it or whatever, and they just hold on to it for so long because it's like, oh man, what could have been? This could have been it. And like, I get the whole mindset of like, you can't control the uncontrollable. It's out of controllable. Let it go. Like I've very much gotten to that point, but I think it's still a hard place to get to. Was there anything that you did as an entrepreneur to kind of coach yourself through that to get to a point where you're just like, look, it's uncontrollable. Nothing I can do about it. Time to move on.
I would say I was sort of a brutal self-examiner. So I would look at myself and I said, I look at all those things you said are just absolutely true, right? Anyone would speak that way to themselves. I think that's just human. So what I would do is I would say to myself, well, I'm being human, right? I'm having these feelings. They're normal feelings. Anybody would have them, right? So now how do you get beyond those? You put them in perspective. So I was a little more introspective. I would say, let me put those into perspective. Let me not take it so seriously. Nothing's that important, right? This wasn't life and death. We weren't on a battlefield, right? Those are serious situations. I always admired courage. Courage was, and from when I was a little kid, I always admired courage. I always thought that I felt like I was a coward, fearful a lot, right? When I was little, and I said, you know what? How do you not be fearful? Well, the best way not to be fearful is to exhibit courage. And you try to do that, right? So I did that from when I was a little kid, it was all self-examination. And if you put anything into perspective, we tend to get wrapped up in these things, right? And if we put it in perspective, distance yourself a little bit from it, look at it, you can see the reality of it. I think the most important thing I had was a principle. So what I was doing is I knew where I wanted to go, right? I had a goal. I knew where I wanted to go. So any difficulty that happened in between was a diversion on the way to the goal. And that helped. So I think those two things, courage, conviction, and having a goal, and making it not so much about yourself. I think that's another thing. I find that the less it is about me, the happier I am. The more I'm making someone else happy, the happier I am.
What's the most courageous thing you've done?
Oh my goodness. I don't consider myself courageous, so it'd be hard for me to say that I did anything courageous. I've seen a lot of other people do a lot of really things that I consider courageous. If you ask them, they tell you that I was just doing what I thought was right at the time. So I would never, kind of compliment myself in that respect.
Is there somebody that you admire for something courageous they've done?
Oh my goodness. Many, many, many people. Yeah. I mean, think about all the people at 9/11. I just saw this thing on TV. The people at 9/11, those firefighters who went in there knowing that they might not ever come out. They probably weren't going to come out, but they were doing it to save lives. That's courage, Usually it's Hemingway defined it as grace under pressure, right? So when you're under pressure, what happens to you? Sometimes people show their colors under pressure, right? Their true colors. And sometimes you see people do amazing things. It's usually regular, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's what I admire the most.
Yeah.
And by the way, I see courage every day in everybody I meet. There's always something there that I admire.
That's so good. Really quick, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to this whole Ritz Carlton Leadership Academy that you went to. What's like the number one thing that you learned at that?
Well, the importance of an obsession with the customer's experience, and how the customer's experience is defined by how it enters into them through their five senses. So what is that? Taste, smell. When you go into a room and if it doesn't smell good, you kind of leave the restaurant, right?
Right.
Tactile things like the clean utensils here in restaurants, or something that feels that sense of touch, that's good. Sight, it's got to look beautiful, right? Beautiful flowers, these kind of things. They touch you in a way, like when you view a painting. I always found it interesting. You view a painting, the best paintings go beyond the mind. You're not thinking about the painting. It's a feeling you get. When people who are sensitive to music listen to music and they hear like a sonata, they're just, oh my, I'm so moved by it, right? And so things that go beyond the intellect and hit the senses are the most crucial things in any business. So when people are having an experience that's delightful, right, which is what the Ritz Carlton does, they teach you how to delight the customer. And there's lots of ways that they do that, but it's through those five senses. So when I applied it to real estate, I tried to build beautiful buildings, right? I always looked at timeless architecture, not those architecture you would see like in the 1970s, sometimes not so good. This was like timeless architecture. And then how do you make the experience of people who are having contact with that architecture exceptional? So that's what we strive to do,
That's awesome. How long is it going to take your development to be built?
We hope to build out the entire development in about 30 months. We've our first phase, which we've just opened for sale for release of 13 units for sale, which will be phase one. Those will be actually available within about 10 months. So people will actually be able to move in to the project during that 10 to 12 month period. Right now, the site's being cleared, work's being done on it. So it's exciting to see.
And what kind of range from like a budget standpoint?
The prices of the units will go from the low 300s to the 700s. So somewhere in there.
Oh, so you got a wide variety.
Yes. We built it that way. We built it so there were different variety of sizes of units so that different people would have opportunities to live there. if you see townhome communities, you tend to see them where they all look exactly the same, right? We varied everything. So it's not the most efficient economically, right? But we said, let's invest in excellence, because people really want to live someplace where you look around and things are a little different. And so if you look at our website, emersongainesville.com, you'll see the idea of what we're trying to accomplish by mixing that.
Yeah. Has, just because I'm thinking about COVID and the impact it's had on my organization, I've heard a lot of, just challenges in the construction world because of COVID and like access, it's even lumber and that kind of thing. I mean, have you had to deal with any of those challenges over the last year?
Oh yeah. I mean, at one point, lumber prices went up to about $2,000 per linear foot. They had been prior to that about $600, $700. So I had to make a decision at one point what to do. And I calculated that those prices would come down. This inflation, it's an inflationary period because everything was stored up because of COVID. It was backed up. Demand was backed up. So when you release that demand, all of a sudden it draws the prices high, because they have to rehire, the manufacturers have to rehire people and get them going and all this. So it takes a while to catch up, which is why the Fed didn't raise interest rates, okay? So they didn't see inflation. So I'm thinking if those smart people aren't going to see it, I think it'll come down. Well, what happened? The price of lumber came down. Now, last time I saw it was $565 a linear foot, 560 from a high of 2,000. So that's what we have to do sometimes. We got to gamble. I could have been wrong, right? But sometimes you gamble. But what we're trying to do is, I've always prided ourselves in trying to be really smart about what we do and somewhat conservative in how we do it. But at the same time, I'm doing what you would consider to be a somewhat of a progressive project, right? So to do progressive things in a business-like fashion, that makes sense. And that's what so we've got both sides of that from the business standpoint. And then what gets delivered to the residents are just a beautiful residence with, right there ties to our natural environment. You can get anywhere in about 4 minutes that you need to. If you work at the new UF Health Center that was purchased, they purchased the Nationwide Insurance Center, and that property, you can walk to work. It's less than a mile.
Cool.
You go bike. So it's got all these great features to it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. This has been super interesting. I look forward to checking it out once it's all finished.
Thanks. I really appreciate taking the time to talk. We're fans of the show, and look forward to you continuing doing some great stuff. So
thanks, man. Well, so tell our audience where they can connect with you. I mean, you said emersongainesville.com, right? That's the website. I mean, social media handles, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, probably the best one is to go. We're on Facebook. So you can go Emerson Gainesville. We have a Facebook page. We also have the website, emersongainesville.com. And that has just all the information in it. It also gives you a feel for what we're trying to create in the community, what will be there when you're there, that kind of a good feel. It gives everyone, I think, an affordable way to live luxuriously in new construction with very little maintenance. So if you're spending a lot of time and money on your yard and on all sorts of stuff, you don't have to do that in a townhome community as Emerson.
Yeah. So. Well, that's the worst too. Yeah. Yard work is the worst. You guys, well, thanks again so much for coming on. It was a pleasure meeting you. And you guys, thanks so much for listening. Thanks to James Leitner, Sarah Linson, to our awesome intern team, Trinity, Gianna, and Noah, for all of your hard work. You guys are great. Super, super appreciate it. We were just talking before the show about how much work goes into just getting this distributed, getting this uploaded. So much love to you guys. And podcast fam, remember that you can find links to all of our incredible sponsors down in the show notes and in the show description on YouTube. And you can find them online at whoagnv.com/sponsors. And special love this episode to our friends at Gainesville Harley Davidson. Thinking about selling a used motorcycle? Look no further than your friends at Gainesville Harley Davidson. Find out what your vehicle is worth in 30 seconds at GainesvilleHarley.com. Trade in and trade up at Gainesville Harley Davidson with their huge inventory of new and used models to fit every budget and lifestyle. Visit their showroom at Northwest 39th Avenue and I-75 or call them at 352-331-6363. Is it time for you to upgrade from your scooter to a brand new Harley Davidson? Then be sure to connect with my friends over at Gainesville Harley. Again, their number is 352-331-6363. And when you call them, be sure to say, I heard you on the WHOA G&V podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa. Give us your best whoa.
Whoa.
We will see you later. Bye.